Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, Ph.D., and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving, purpose-minded women who've written nonfiction books and want to amplify their message beyond the book. I'm a college professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to use their books to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and purpose. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you take time to listen into the podcast. Really appreciate you being here. And today I'm talking with my colleague and friend, Dr. Kimberly Nao. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Kimberly. Kimberly is an educator and a consultant, and she currently is an associate professor of education at Mount St. Mary's University. She is a diversity fellow there, and she provides professional learning opportunities in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she has worked extensively on diversity and equity issues across emphasis, such as race and gender, and she does so many amazing things for organizations throughout the LA area. She has trained K through 12 teachers, police officers, community college faculty, staff, healthcare workers, parents, and many more. Can't wait to hear more about that. And as a yoga and mindfulness teacher, Kimberly believes that self-awareness and compassion for others leads to social transformation. Welcome, Kimberly Nao.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be on your podcast.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you. All right. So now I read your formal bio introduction. Why don't you tell us in your own words, just tell us more about you and the work you do.
So yes, I am indeed a DEI consultant. I also add in there anti-racism consultant because people don't often make that distinction, but I find there's a big distinction between DEI and anti-racism. I've been doing this work mainly in LA area, but now, especially since George Floyd, it's been really branching out even across the country. I've been doing it for about close to 10 years, starting with the issues around gender and looking at especially violence and how conceptions of gender can lead to violence. When we think of these really strict gender norms and, for example, men having to adhere to specific gender norms or feeling like they have to, and how that can lead to violence. And so I've done that with that. But then, gender is intersectional, just as race is intersectional. And so we look at all the various intersections around gender, race, class, sexual orientation, and how those play together within the consulting that I do now. So there's a strong emphasis on power dynamics in the workplace and in the world, and how we can make workplaces more equitable. The way that I came to this work, really, it's so interesting because I've been telling so many people lately that I feel like I've been talking about race since I was in preschool. Because, I'm African-American. My mother is Japanese, so I'm mixed, but people perceive me as African-American. And when people would see me with my mother, they would be confused. Who is this and why don't you look like her? I feel like I do look like her. I'm just not the same, complexion as her. Mm-hmm. But that's been happening for me since preschool, kindergarten, et cetera. So it really had me thinking about issues of race at a very, very early age and why people are different races, what that means. But also, just as we all do, I got socialized into an idea of what race means and what it means to be Black, what it means to be white, what it means to be Asian. And I grappled with that a lot as a child. So it took me through really thinking about it through my education and then professionally to where now I teach others and I instruct on issues related to race and its intersections. So that's pretty much the beginnings of who I am and why I do the work that I do. Of course, just being very moved by what's going on in the world and feeling very called to make a change, I always say, in my corner of the world, because it can feel daunting and overwhelming to think about making the change for the whole world, but I do have my corner of the world where I can have some impact. So that's what I try to do every day.
Yeah, I love that idea of making a change in my corner of the world. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really love that because it's manageable, right?
Yes.
We get to do it in a way that works for us. Okay. All right. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of important work, and it's interesting to hear how you started thinking about it at such a young age at that time. I mean, it's important work, but I would imagine it's very emotional work. So what about it really lights you up? Like what energizes you about it that keeps you doing this work?
Well, I have a natural curiosity around these issues about how people relate to each other. Again, stemming from just being a child and watching how people, reacted to me or how I reacted to other people. I remember because I felt so different, I went to predominantly white schools because I felt so different from everyone else. Anytime anyone else looked different, I was immediately curious. Who are you? Where are you from? What language do you speak? And where do you fit in this dynamic of what for me when I was a child was a very black white binary? And
Mm.
so I just have this kind of natural curiosity around that. So I was always investigating it on my own outside of the classroom because, of course, no one teaches you, especially, growing up in the 70s, no one, you got this sort of Martin Luther King exposure to multiculturalism, but no one taught you how to negotiate the dynamics of power and race and gender and all of our other identities. No one teaches you how to do that. And so I kind of had to figure it all out by reading lots of fiction, reading nonfiction by really powerful thinkers like James Baldwin and Alice Walker. And as a kid reading that stuff going, they're putting language to what I'm experiencing. And so what energizes me is to be able to help other people do that, to kind of make visible the invisible, the thing that we all swim in. It's like a fish. Does a fish know it's wet? I don't know, but we all know, do we even know we're swimming in this, this environment where race plays such a role? And some of us know it starkly because it hits us every day, but we don't always have the language to talk about it. So what energizes me is giving people exposure to ways that people have thought and written about it for a long time to help people see what their world is through new eyes, and then help hopefully with that knowledge and with the language to talk and think about it, they're able to transform their spaces to be less racist, more equitable, more inclusive, and just more nurturing for a broader range of people.
Yes, yes. Wow, you have your hands full with that work, but you would have to have that kind of energy to fuel you to do it. So that's really great that you have that. That keeps you going. What would you say in the midst of all of this? What is the biggest challenge in doing the work? I mean, we know the issue itself is a challenge, but in doing the work, because I'm imagining there might be some other consultants generally, and particularly some DEI consultants listening in who might be able to relate to the things that you're talking about. So what would you say is one of your biggest challenges?
I think there's some broad challenges and almost philosophical challenges around people feeling ready to do the work and just the world that we're in that makes it so necessary to do the work. And when you just took that breath and said, wow, that's a lot that you're taking on, it does feel like you're trying to change the world at a certain point. So it becomes challenging to remember to scale down the work and to pace myself and to manage my expectations around what can be accomplished, particularly at a particular organization. Because when you enter an organization, people are at different points on the journey of understanding race and equity and justice. And so when you enter an organization, you're always having to say, okay, where's the leadership? Where are they on this? Are they bought in? Are they bringing me in to check a box, which I won't do if they are? Are they bringing me in to create real structural change, which I will do that? And then where are they in their understanding with race? And then where's their team? Where is their leadership? And where is the people on the front line, the people on the ground in the organization? because everyone's at a different place with it. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is learning how to meet people where they are. And so what I like to do is to really go in and do a bit of a needs assessment before I actually engage in any workshops. And so I'll try to understand, what do people think at all points of the hierarchy? Where are they in their understanding about how race operates within their organization? And when I get that kind of lay of the land, then I'm able to kind of present that back to leadership or whoever brought me to the organization to say, this is what we're finding, and this is where we're recommending that you might need some support. And these are the areas that you're doing well, and you should continue to do that work. And then with leadership, we construct a plan for how we'll move forward with doing the work. But I do find that sometimes you'll have a gung-ho person who brought you in and they're excited about it, but then they're struggling with, how do I get my team to understand what I'm trying to do here? Mm-hmm. And then you also have to, often what I realize is those people, they don't have the training either in understanding race and inequity. So they're really relying on me to bring that expertise. So I have to both educate while bringing people along, and that could be quite a challenge. Yeah. But it's also the fun part, because you get to let people know, okay, I know you think you know this. Here's some other ways to think about it, or how are we aligning so that everyone is on board? And so really looking at organizations in a needs-based way and coming to some common language and common understandings, I think that can be challenging.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of following up with that, if there's a DEI consultant listening now, or any consultant, just think about now, separate from the specifics of the kind of work you do, and maybe just as a business person who is a consultant. Yeah. So either one of those. What advice would you give to someone listening who is a consultant generally in their business, or it might particularly be a DEI consultant in their business? But I'm imagining it's someone who is a high achieving woman who is doing this work, and it's important for them to make a difference. But I'm sure, like we all have challenges in our work and life and business. What's a piece of advice or a tip you would give to the woman I just described?
I would encourage her to really put down strong foundations and structure for the business aspect. Because many of us, especially like I'm from academia, I don't have business training. So coming in, I had to really move beyond loving doing workshops, trainings, coaching. I had to move beyond loving that part to understanding and laying a foundation for the business part of it that was going to lay the structure for how I do everything else. So I had to understand my accounting processes. I had to understand how to invoice people, how to value my time in terms of what's my hourly rate. How much would I be willing to negotiate with that hourly rate? What are some things that I'll do for a flat rate? And what are some things that I'm going to say, no, I want to be able to bill hourly? And some of this I'm learning through doing. Of course, all of it I'm learning through doing. But I'm also learning from strong mentorship from people who run their own businesses. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really key because, again, in academia, we don't really have to run the business. The university's there and we go teach. But when you're doing your own consulting, you do have to run it like a business. You have to think about the marketing. You have to think about, kind of the hustle of your website and getting your name out there and attracting clients. And so I have now an accountant, a financial advisor, and others that have their own businesses that I connect with and meet with regularly so that I get that mentorship and we can bounce ideas off of each other. But when I went to go see my financial advisor, the thing that really struck me that he said was, every decision you make today for your business is going to lead to what happens 10 years from now. So you need to have in your mind where you want your business to be 10 years from now, so that each decision is guided by toward that goal. Because right now when I'm starting, getting the business laid and all of that, before I had a strong structure in place, I was really just like, oh, business is coming. I'll do that. I'll do that job. I'll do this job. Not really thinking, okay, but down the line, what do I want? Do I want people working with me? Do I want to have a book? Do I want to, what is it that I want to do? Because if I don't set up a structure now that allows for that, I'm not going to have that. There could be some happy things that happen because of that. But I think going toward a goal, I think, is a really important one. And having that in place and having mentorship to do that is key.
Yeah, yeah. And when you were saying that, somehow I could see a road, like when you're like 10 years from now. Yeah, that path and that structure makes a big difference, makes a huge difference. Okay, all right. So now the name of the podcast is Leadership Purpose. And I imagine the people who are listening are also people who are purpose-minded, in addition to being consultants and having their business and writing authors of books and that kind of thing. All right. So given that, this thinking about purpose, what are your views on purpose? Do you think it's important to have purpose in your work? Is it a necessary thing? If so, why? If not, why not?
I mean, I think it's crucial to have purpose. And I would imagine it's very difficult to embark on a business without having a strong sense of purpose behind the business. Just the same as going for my Ph.D. was really difficult when I didn't feel like I had my own sense of purpose behind it. Otherwise, I'm just taking a bunch of classes and trying to get A's in them, as opposed to I'm doing this because at the end, there's a purpose that I'm reaching for. And so I kind of think of it as a calling, because purpose, I mean, for me, I'm called to do the work that I do, because if I tried to run away from this work, I don't think I could escape because of my natural desire to want the world to be better in this way. And I feel like that's my purpose. It's my calling. I want the world to be better around these issues.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a very broad purpose, but just like the financial goal, everything that I do, I realize now, now that I'm, where I am in terms of my career and as a human being, as a woman of a certain age, it's like, I realize when I look back, everything was leading to this, everything that I did led me to this place, because this purpose and this calling was behind it that whole time. So there are things that I did as an undergrad or a recently graduated, student who tutoring other students, that I draw on that. Like I draw on when I was a learning skills counselor and I had to teach people how to do time management. And now I'm coaching managers and organizations. And I'm like, okay, so here are some skills for time management. I'm really drawing on all of that, those things that I was doing to make whatever my 9 to 5 was more fun and enjoyable. I would add in, an aspect of teaching people around race or gender. I would add that in just naturally, just because I loved it. And all of those things that I did along the way led to me being able to draw on that right now. So, and I think that sense of purpose was there that whole time. That sense of a calling was there that whole time.
And you were just connecting the dots as you were living.
I was living toward my purpose. I didn't always realize it, but I was living toward my joy. And I know you talk about that, like kind of where your joy and your skills and all of that intersect in that Venn diagram. That's where I kept gravitating toward that center by trying to pull in, my passion for this type of work. And I'm using it every day in everything that I do as a DEI consultant.
Yeah, that must be great. You must feel good knowing that all these pieces have come together.
It does. And it feels very fulfilling. And it feels like all those things that I almost felt like I was aimlessly doing something, or that I was doing something that was always the extra. Now it feels like, okay, there was a purpose behind all of that, and sometimes I didn't know the purpose, but because it was my passion, because it was my calling, the purpose revealed itself. And now I can do it more strategically and mindfully.
Yes, I love that. Of course, I would love
Yeah.
that. Resonate with that. Yes, and I'm imagining people who are listening could also resonate with that. All right, so now in our last couple questions here, you've been generous with your time. I know you've had a full, busy schedule. So before you go, is there anything that I've not asked you that you want to talk about that you're like, hey, I'd like to mention this thing or that thing? If not, it's okay, but I want to give you an opportunity in case I didn't ask you something you wanted to say.
Yeah, you haven't necessarily touched on the mindfulness aspect of this. So I will talk a little bit about the I keep using this word intersection, but the intersection of mindfulness and DEI and anti-racism work. And really, when I say mindfulness, I do want to talk about yoga. And I know people latch on to mindfulness as a term because it's more familiar. But my yoga training was, again, felt like a side passion to me, but it really shifted and transformed my life in a way that made me more aware of who I am, what my strengths are, and how to give myself a sense of contentment. And I find that I'm often using some of these tools in my DEI consulting and anti racism consulting. So sometimes I'll start out a session with a little mindfulness. I start out my coaching, my individual coaching, with a bit of centering, encouraging people to breathe, because this work is not easy work. It's very personal work. It's when you bring people through discussing race, it touches on so many personal triggers. It makes people emotional. People who have had experienced harm. And so being aware of people's responses and their bodies and the way that people will physically react to things. Like now, I'm so much more attuned to people that participate in my workshops and trainings. I'm so attuned to when their bodies shift or when they have certain expressions on their face. And I need to respond to that. I need to be present for that. So I feel like the yoga training has been a nice complement to the work that I do. So that's one thing that I do want to share, is that if people have a practice for themselves that centers them, it doesn't have to be yoga, obviously, but anything that centers you and makes you more compassionate and empathetic and attentive to others, I think will strengthen the work that you're able to do. It makes you a better listener, and it makes you more able to hold space for people and what they bring when they have these conversations. And another just sort of insight about doing the work in organizations is that the organization often assumes that I'm going there to make the organization better, and that is what I hope to do. And that's what they hope to do, right? They're hoping to make hopefully, if they're coming in good faith, they're hoping to make the organization better. But what often happens is you end up making individuals see themselves and see the organization in new ways, and individuals will hold the organization accountable for what it says that it's trying to do. So if the organization is saying, we're trying to be an anti-racist organization, individuals will hold the organization to that. And so sometimes success might look like individuals becoming empowered in ways that actually doesn't empower the organization.
Yes.
The individuals are now empowered, but is the organization keeping pace with that individual empowerment? So I have shifted my idea of success to not just include organizations moving, because organizations move at a snail's pace, but to include how individuals move. And even if it means they leave the organization, because maybe their self-awareness led to them having to do that. So I just wanted to share that because it was a nugget that I've received from other diversity trainers in terms of what is the tension between working with individuals within an organization when organizations change often at a slower pace than individuals do.
That makes a lot of sense. And I have about 10 more questions, but I know you and probably everybody listening, ready to hear more about you maybe, or know how they can be in touch with you and connect with your work, or if they're interested in either your DEI or your mindfulness work, which I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to get back to it. So I'm glad you brought us back there. So how can people be in touch with you if they want to know more about you and connect with you?
So I am on LinkedIn. People can connect with me there. I'm on Facebook. Might be difficult to find me, so maybe message me on LinkedIn. And then I'm on Instagram under my Japanese adopted name, which is Kimiko, KIMIKONAO on Instagram. So,
Okay, we'll be sure to put those in the show notes. And do you have a preferred way that people reach out to you and connect with you out of those?
Instagram is my most immediate, or LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. We'll be sure to put those in the show notes. Okay, everyone. And, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly Nao, for being here and for taking time out of your busy work and schedule to share your wisdom and insight and experience. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Glad you're here. Okay, everyone, if you want to hear more about me, learn more about me and my work, you could reach me on my website, robinlowens.com, or you can reach out to me on social media at Robin L. Owens, Ph.D., at Robin L. Owens, Ph.D., or if you happen to be an author and you've been thinking of ways of how can you get your message out more broadly, how can you save more time, increase your impact and income, and you've been thinking about turning your book into a course, I can help you with that. I have a free training at my website, createmasterfulcourses.com, and you can get my free video training there to help you in those efforts. And in the meantime, I'll see you next time. And this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.